Okay, so you got two handouts today. We have exercise 114, which we're going to do today, which is to start working on your assignment 107. And yes, I know that the assignment numbers go way out of order. There's a reason I gave you assignment 107, because that's the final for the class. And so we start on it now, just in the beginning of October, and it's due in December. So you've got plenty of time to work on this. We're going to start working on it now, partly because we're going to work through kind of the advanced InDesign features with multi-page documents and masters and that sort of thing. So it's logical to start working on it. And I'll go through and demo it for you. But it's also important to start thinking about it so that you're ready to put your work together. You now have 3 assignments under your belt, 101, 102, and 103. And so you can start to figure out how they're going to fit in. In the back here, I put together, these are a bunch of old portfolios that people have left behind. There's a variety of different layouts. There's square, you know, the typical kind of layouts, this kind of thing. These are good samples for you to take a look at. I can't promise you that all of them are actually good. I haven't gone through them. But a lot of them are very good. And so it's worth your time to kind of go through and peruse them. Deep in the stack somewhere in here is actually, it's kind of seen better days. I think the cover's even missing now. This was my portfolio that I used to apply to grad school when I did grad school, so you can look at that as a reference point. But really, it's worth kind of looking through and seeing what other people have done. Recognize that I don't have everything, because a lot of times people come and get their portfolios at the end, so I don't necessarily have everybody's. So this is the leftovers, the things that people haven't come to collect. And we'll go through them in a little bit more detail, but at least it gets your ideas flowing so that you can get ready. So the final portfolio is worth 30% of your overall grade, which is a lot. Shouldn't be a surprise. It is the final. It's expected that you spend a lot of time working on it by yourself. It wouldn't be a final if it wasn't a lot of by yourself work. So I give it to you now. We'll spend some time in class working on it today. We'll come back and revisit it a couple more times as the semester goes on, but that doesn't mean that you should just forget about it altogether in between the times that I ask you to work on it. Does that make sense? Right? So it's the kind of thing you want to keep working on. I've debated for a long time whether I should mandatory make you come see me during office hours so I can go over your portfolio. It is not mandatory that you do that. However, it is suggested that you do that. And if you can't make my office hours, let's find a time when we can actually talk about it. Because a few red lines never hurt anybody's portfolio. So it's definitely worth thinking about. Portfolios in general are really critical for the long-term architectural career, or the design career for that matter, in that when you move forward, so let's say you move on to Berkeley, you need to have a portfolio ready so that if somebody were to ask you for a portfolio, you'd have something to present. One of the things that Berkeley loves to do is when you get placed in a studio, you know, this would be the equivalent of like a 220 type class. Instead of just being grouped randomly, they'll try to assign you to a specific studio head that matches your interests. And they need to figure out what your interests are based on your portfolio. So it's always good to have one in your back pocket. If you go to apply for a job at a firm, chances are they're going to say, where's your portfolio of work? Right? If you go to apply to grad school, they're going to say, where's your portfolio? If you go to apply to transfer, a lot of times they'll ask you for a portfolio. It depends on the class, or it depends on the school. The other thing that happens is there are different requirements for format or size, depending on where you're applying or what you're doing. What we do in this class is relatively loose and open-ended, but it should work for most job applications, for most schools, but sometimes you'll have to cull out some unnecessary stuff if they give you a page limit. You know, maybe you're only allowed 3 pages or something, in which case you get rid of a bunch of stuff. But it's good to have it so that you don't have to create it out of the blue. Okay? So for your assignment 107, we'll start working on it today. You have 3 things that can already go in your portfolio, as I said, 101, 102, and 103. For this class, you're required to put every assignment into your portfolio. So 102 or 101 through 106, because 107 is the portfolio, you can't put that inside itself. So 101 through 106 have to be in the portfolio. If you end up using the portfolio down the road, I won't be offended if you remove some of the assignments from digital tools, or you condense them into one page or whatever. That's up to you. But for this class, you have to include that. You can include anything else that you want to. right? So let's say you're in 136 and you're doing Rhino renderings. There's no reason you shouldn't put that stuff in. If you're in 121 and you did the Mondrian Museum and you did the Calder Museum and you have photos of your model and all that stuff, put those in, right? If you're in 220 and you're doing that kind of work, put that in. Does that make sense? So anything that's relevant, you should put in. So there's no cap on how much you put in. There's just a mandatory you have to put the things from this class in. Okay? All right, so good. So I'm going to go ahead today, and we don't have a formal lecture because we're going to talk a lot about InDesign and how InDesign kind of works in these multi-page documents. I'm going to go ahead and open up InDesign here. Okay, and so once again, I'm going to pick document as my, my default piece here. And when I do this, I want to think a little bit, and I'm going to walk into the back and grab a couple portfolios as examples here. When I start thinking about the portfolio, one, I have to think about what size I want. And so some people choose to have something that's in a square format, you know, an 8 by 8 or an 8.5 by 8.5, something like that. That's an option. A lot of people choose the 8.5 by 11. This is probably the easiest option to pick. Sometimes people like it this way. Sometimes people like it landscape. Generally speaking, landscape fits the drawings the best, so a lot of people end up defaulting to that. That doesn't mean that a square doesn't look really nice. So it's up to you. The other thing that you have to decide is whether you want to have what's called facing pages, where you have two pages that face each other when you open the book, right? So you have content on this side, content on this side, or whether you want to have non-facing pages where you have something like this. You have content just on this side, blank on the back. Okay, so the advantage to the facing page is that if somebody gave you a cap on how many pages you were allowed to have, if you print on the fronts and the backs, you get more space. Right? So there's an advantage to doing facing pages. But from a layout standpoint, you have to think through how do they really work together as a unit. Where, if we go back to something like this, if I can hold on to it, you know, you can place one piece of information on this page, and as we flip the page to something else, it can be something entirely different on the next page because it's just one page. It's not a spread that you have to think through. So if we're choosing between those, we have this checkbox here for facing pages. Right? If it's checked, we get left and right pages. If it's unchecked, we get a series of single pages. It's up to you, but that's what that means. Okay? The next thing here is the page size is letter. I'm going to leave it at letter, and I'm going to leave it in a landscape orientation. Right? If you wanted it to be 8 inches by 8 inches, you would adjust that here. Right? I'm going to set the margins to be at 0. So I type 0 in the top. Because they're linked together, it changes all the margins at the same time. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And I get my first page. And so in order to see this, we're going to click on the Pages window over here on the top right. And we'll see that I have page 1. Right? It's highlighted in blue. And you see how it has a long line right along the left side of the page there? That means that it's part of a booklet of facing pages. So if I were to add some pages, let me come down here to the little new page icon, and I'll click and add 2. You can see that we have the first page with the binding, and then we have the back side of the first page, and then the front side. So we go page 1, 2, and then 3. So it's essentially the same thing as, page 1, page 2, and page 3. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm looking at it as what's called a spread because I see pages 2 and pages 3 together here. Okay. The other thing that I can learn a little bit from the Pages menu is you see that on each page, down below it, we have the page number, but in the upper right or the upper left corner of the page, I have a letter A. You guys see that little A? That tells me that it has a master that's been applied to it, which is called the A master. So in the upper section of the Pages window, we have something called Masters, and then below it we have the actual pages. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see the masters. So right now all I have is the A master. I can create a new master by clicking up here in this region and then clicking on the new button. Oops. Right, sorry, I have to right click and say new master. Right, this will be the B master, and I'll go ahead and say OK, and you'll see that it'll say A master and B master. Okay? What the purpose of a master is for things that appear on every page. So for example, page numbers would appear on every page. Or let's say you had a colored header bar or something that would appear on every page. Right? You do that stuff on a master page so that it's consistent page to page. So let's do an example here. I'm going to double click on the B master pages here so that I can look at my B master. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a colored bar at the top of the page. So maybe it's something like this. And let me flip the colors here. And I really don't want it to be black. Let's do kind of a gray. Maybe do it at like a 30% gray or something like that. And so I have this gray bar that goes across the top of the page there. I want the same gray bar on the back side of this page, so let me go ahead and just Control-C to copy it, Control-V to paste it, and we'll drop it to that side of the page as well. And so you see I have that gray bar that goes across the two pages. Right? And then maybe I want to put some text down here in the bottom that will ultimately be a page number. So I'm just going to, for right now, we'll align it to the right, and we'll say page number. Okay? Now, what happens, right, is the content that's drawn on the A master, or excuse me, on the B master shows up only on the B master. So if I went to my individual pages, let's go to pages 2 and 3. Okay? Nothing shows up that I did on my master because these pages 2 and 3 have the A master applied. If I right click on the page and I say apply master to page, and I say instead of the A master, I want the B master, you see that now what I did on the B master shows up on this page. Let me do the same thing for page 3 here. Apply master to pages, B master. I'll say OK. And so now that shows up on the page, including my little page number text. Okay? Now, you'll notice because it was done on the master, I can't select these boxes. I can't move them. I can't type in these boxes. It's a permanent thing. Okay, that's been done. So the masters are things that you edit once, and it applies to multiple pages. So let's continue on, and let me do pages 4 and 5. I'm going to right-click and say Apply Master to Pages. We'll apply the B master to them. And so now pages 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 all have the B master applied. So if I were to change the B master, let's say, I didn't really like this shade of gray. Let me go ahead and change that to be a little bit darker. Let's go 60, for example. I'll say OK. Let's change this one to 60% gray, too. And then I were to go to pages 2 and 3, you see that the gray has changed. So I only changed it once on the master, and it applies to 2, 3, 4, and 5. So anything that the master has been applied to, it applies. So you can see where this would be very advantageous if you had a really large book, for example. You change it once, and it applies to all the pages. Okay? So let me go ahead and go back up to the B master. And I wrote down here in the text just page number. But what I'd like to have happen is I'd like the text or the number of the page to automatically show up in this particular page. That would be ideal. So what I'm going to do is instead of having page number typed here, I'm going to go up to the Type menu, and I'm going to say Insert Special Character. I'm going to go to Markers, and I'll say Current Page Number. And when I click on Current Page Number, it's going to change, and it's going to say B because I'm on the B master. But if I go to page 3, double-click on 3, you see my page number shows up as page 3. If I go to page 5, my page number shows up as page 5. Right? So it populates across however many pages that I have. So if I come back here to my BMaster and I want to change the font or the size of my particular page number, I can go ahead and change the font, for example. And let me change the size. I'm not necessarily recommending making it really big, but I'm just trying to show you how this would work. Right. Now if I jump to pages 2 and pages 3, it now matches the page number there. So let me jump back up to my BMaster. Let me take this, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it over. Oops. Helps if you push the right button here. Control C, Control V. Let me make this align to the left, and I'll put this down in this corner. Control minus will zoom me out a little bit. Now I want these two to line up correctly, so let me take this one and this one, set this as the key object. Remember, I can use those align tools, so if I go to Window, Object and Layout, Align, I can then align them both, say, to the bottom so that they're identical across the two pages. And now if I went back to pages 2 and 3, right, there's page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5. Okay? So I could take this a step further. Let's say there's certain sizes of pages that I want to show, or certain sizes of images that are going to show up on a particular page. Right? I can go ahead and create a frame on this. So let's say, right, something like that. I can put a frame there. And I'll break this one into a couple smaller pieces here. Say, there. Something like that. Now remember, I might want to use the align tools here to distribute them at a certain distance. So let me go back to Window, Object and Layout, Align. Right? And so I might want to distribute the spacing to 0.125 inches, which would be 1/8 of an inch. Let's distribute the spacing. Let me keep this one, and we'll distribute those. Same thing. I want to keep this one, and we'll distribute that. I want to keep this. Oops. Take this, hold down Shift, that, keep this, distribute to 1/8, and then we'll make sure that these line up nicely. Okay, so I set those up. Okay, now if I go to the pages themselves, you see how the frames exist on those pages, right? Same frames on pages 4 and 5 as they are on pages 2 and 3. I can use these as actual frames. So if I went to place an image, I can go to File and then Place. I can pick an image. And when I move over the top of one of these frames, it will automatically put the image inside of that frame. So then I can go to right-click, go to Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally, and I can have that show up. I can do the same thing here, Control-D to place. I can pick another example. Oops. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. I could go here, right-click to Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally, and we can do it one more time. And that could go there. Okay? And we'll do it one last time or something else. Oops. And go to Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. So you can see I can really easily start to fill images in. Now, in this particular example, the frame was on top of this object. If I go back to the master, right, and I take this and this, and I right-click and say Arrange, Bring to Front, it will be on top of that. And then I can go back to my BMaster, and it did a terrible job of doing what I wanted it to do. Okay, I have to do something else. I need these to be on a layer that's on top. So let me jump over. I've selected those. Let me jump to Layers, and I'm going to create a new layer and put those objects on layer 2 so that they're on top of stuff on layer 1. and now we can go back to pages, and now that's on top. Okay? I could change the gray to have transparency. So we've done that before. If I come over to effects, I can change the opacity down, say something like that. And now if I jump back to my pages here, right, you can see that the image bleeds underneath that particular bar. So I have a lot of flexibility in what I can do and how these layouts work. And perhaps these really need to come up, right, so that they go underneath. Let me go to fitting, fill frame proportionally, right, so that they match. But you get the idea of how this stuff works together. The one thing that does not work well, right, in a master is text. Because if, let's say that I come here and I want to put some title text in this gray bar, let me go ahead and create a text box, for example, something like this. So let's say it's assignment 101. Move this down a little bit. This has to be much bigger. Maybe not quite that big. And we'll leave it as that right now. So if I say that that's assignment 101, for example, on the master, then every page, wouldn't it be nice if it actually matched up? Come on. Sorry, I have to move that up onto the top layer because it's behind. There we go. Go back to pages, come here, see how it says assignment 101 there, but if I move on, I have another assignment 101, and I can't edit this text anymore, right? So in this case, I would recommend the text go on the individual pages rather than the master. So let me jump back up to the master. I'm going to copy this text. I'll delete it. And then we'll go to the individual page, and I'm going to say Edit, Paste in Place, and it's going to show up there. If I go to the next page, if I go to Edit, Paste in Place, the text will be in exactly the same place. Okay? But now it's editable, so I could say that this is assignment 103 or 104. Okay? So I don't recommend doing text in a master. I only recommend doing the background imagery for what you're doing. Okay? So today, for your exercise, I'm asking that you skip the first page, because it's probably going to be a table of contents or something, and it's pretty hard to lay that out yet. And to concentrate on the first spread, pages 2 and 3. Since you have 3 assignments, you might move on to the next page, right, so that you can start to set this stuff up. Do make sure you play around with the master versus the page numbers themselves. Right? There are more advanced things that we can do to start to designate, and I'll show you an example of that in just a second, for how it can work in a much more sophisticated level. So let's say, let me jump back up to my B master. I have to make a few changes. This is way too large, and I don't like the font. So let's go back to something a little bit cleaner here. Sorry, I'm not used to the fonts that are available on this. Yeah, something like that will work. Let's drop this size down. Something like that. And remember, we had character styles and paragraph styles. I'm going to create a style for the page number. We'll call this page number. And that will allow me to jump over to this one and apply the page number style, and it will match. Okay? So it helps just be consistent if I have that set up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the page number here, and then I'm going to go to my pages, and I'm going to set up what are called sections. So I'll start here on the first page, right, page 2. I'm going to right-click and go to something called Numbering and Section Options. And so this works kind of like if we had chapters of a book, right, where we can actually specify what this section is about. So we're going to leave it on automatic page numbering, right, and my section marker right here, we're going to call this assignment 101, right? And I'll call this A101 as the section prefix there. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And we now get this little triangle, and you see that the page numbers say A101 2, A101 3. Okay? Let me go ahead and back in my master page, and I know this is a little bit more complicated, right? I'm going to insert under type, insert special character markers. I'm going to say section marker, and so it's going to be B, and then we'll put section in brackets here. And let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. And I might need to make my text a little bit bigger. Something like that. Now if I go to this, you see that it says 2 and then assignment 101. Okay, so the page number, and then it gives me assignment 101. Right? If I came over here to page 3, for example, if I added the section marker over here, so let me go ahead and go to type, insert special character, markers, section marker. I need to make this a little bit bigger, sorry. Let me zoom out, because I think I got these out of line. Take this and take this. And let me go to Window, Object and Layout, Align. I'm going to align to the top. And then I'm also going to take these guys and, oops, take this and this. Oh, come on. Sorry, I want these to be a little bit further down. Something like that. Okay, so let me go to this page, and we see this is 2, assignment 101. This one is 3, assignment 101. This is behind my image, so once again, I'm going to go back to my master, and I'm going to change these to be on a layer that's in front of. So I'll go to Layers. And incidentally, to change the layer, all I have to do is drag this little box with the object selected. If I drag this little box that represents the objects from one layer to another, it works the same as it does in Illustrator to change layers. So now if I went back to my pages and I went here, you see that it says assignment 101 and assignment 101 there. Okay, well, what if I want this to be assignment 101 and this to be assignment 102? I can change my numbering and section so that right here, numbering and section options, we're going to start a section. This is A102, and this is called assignment 102. And I'll say OK. And now that changes to be assignment 101 and assignment 102. Does that make sense? So in the nature of a portfolio, it's not critical to have these section markers because it's a few number of pages. I mean, how many pages is a portfolio? 12? You could go through and manually put that in. Let's say you had a 100-page book and you wanted to have these section markers. It's a lot easier to do it that way. If you have chapters or something, it's a lot easier to do it that way as well. So I like to show you this stuff just in case it ends up being useful. It's not required for the portfolio, though. I do recommend the page numbers as part of it. OK, so that's numbering and section options. By the way, on any one of these numbering and section options, if we didn't want the page numbers to be 1, 2, 3, 4, we could change how the page numbers are displayed. We could have it in Roman numerals, etc. So there's plenty of options for that. OK? Are there any questions about kind of the more advanced intricacies of InDesign? I think you'll end up discovering things along the way as you start to build your own portfolio. So I want to give you a lot of time today to work on building the portfolio, and then you can ask me questions depending on what it is that you're running into. Okay? Do spend time looking at the actual portfolios. I'll put these in the back to get yourself some ideas and get thinking about it. You got a question? Yeah.
Can you repeat how you did the page numbers, attachments, and
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So let's do, I'm going to do another master so that it's a fresh set here. So let me come up here. I'm going to right-click and say New Master. And this is going to be the C master. So on a given document, let's say the digital tools book, by the way, which is, I wrote for this class or this class and the next class. The whole thing's laid out in InDesign. So all of these things where the pages turn out, all of that happens in InDesign exactly as I'm showing you here. Okay? So, and I might have an A master through M master, depending on what I'm trying to do. So there's a variety of different masters that I might use. So there's no limit to how many you can have. Anyway, so I have C master here. I'm working on the C master pages. I want to add a page number. So I'm going to click the text box. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And I'm going to draw a little text box in the corner. And in that, I can change my font and my size and the rest of the normal text options. But I'm going to go to the Type menu. I'm going to go to Insert Special Character, and then Markers, and then Current Page Number. Okay? And it shows up just as a letter because it's on the master. So it's going to show up as a C. But that number is going to change as we go page to page. So let me go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to put this on the other page. I'm going to put it over here. Let me zoom out. Control minus will zoom out, or Control 0 will show the whole page. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. I want these two to be lined up, so I'm going to hold down Shift so that I can select them both. And then I can look at this Align window, and let's align to the top so that they're the same. This also needs to be justified to the right so that it's on that side. Okay? So this, once again, has C and C, but that's going to change to the actual page number. So if I came back here to pages 4 and 5, right, I could right-click on the page number and say Apply Master to Pages, and change from the B Master to the C Master. And it's going to change Apply Master to Pages. And we can go to the C Master, like that. And so now we have, right, C and C. On the C Master, I only have the white across the top. So now I have just 4 and 5, okay, because I changed the master. If I did something different on the C Master, all right, let's say I put a bar down the side here. Something like that. And it was down the side, it would then show up on this page because it was part of that master. Does that make sense? Right? And all I'm doing to switch between the master and the pages is I'm double-clicking on the page of the master that I want to go to, and then I'm double-clicking on the page that I want to go to. Now, one of the things that you can notice so that you can tell whether you're in the master or not, when I double-click and I'm on the master, I get just the pages, and I get no pages above or below. Right? Just the single set of masters. If I'm on one of the active pages, I can scroll up and scroll down and see my other pages in my document. So that's one way of checking whether you're on the master or not. Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to turn you loose. Do make sure you look at the portfolios and have a look. I think that's it. Okay.